Now my environment's been customized to some degree. How can I have other people on my team or other machines leverage this customized environment? Usually after many months of development, this will be quite extensive, and you certainly don't want to lose the changes every time you rebuild a machine or if you move to another machine. So let's experiment with this. Select Tools, Import and Export Settings. The Import and Export Settings wizard allows me to manage configuration for my particular environment. I can choose to export the environment settings. This will be stored in a VS Settings file, which I can transfer from machine to machine or from person to person, or I can import selected environment settings based on any customized settings that are stored on this machine or the default settings that come with the Visual Studio 2008 install. Or I can just choose to reset all settings entirely. In this case, let's go ahead and reset all the settings so we normalize our environment. Select Next. It'll prompt us to save our current settings. Let's go ahead and save these. After all, we spent some time customizing our environment. Give it a name that makes sense, and you can store it in a particular directory where you like to store your settings. Select Next. Now you have a choice of different environment settings you can work with. If you're a C# programmer, you may choose to work with C# development settings. VB, C++ might choose to do the same. Web developers also have a customized environment by default that comes out of the box. In this case, let's choose the general development settings, which mimic earlier versions of Visual Studio. For those of you that work with previous editions of Visual Studio, this will be a familiar environment and IDE for you to work from. Select Finish. By selecting Finish, all my settings are now saved to the VS Settings file, and my entire environment is now reset to general development settings. When I close this, I'll see these changes implemented. As you can see, my Server Explorer, my toolbox are now minimized, and you'll notice that they're blank. Let's go ahead and pin this for now. And you'll notice other settings have changed, such as the toolbars that I'm working with at the top of the screen. So let's say I move to a different machine. How can I go ahead and import my settings from a previous machine? Again, you can do so using the same wizard. Select Tools, Import and Export Settings. Select Import Selected Environment Settings. This will allow you to choose from a particular file or select something generic out of the box. Let's not save our settings and select Next. On this screen, you'll see the collections of different settings that you can import. You'll see the ones that we saw earlier, the general development and the language-specific settings, as well as any custom settings that you've created that are unique to this machine. These are all stored in an XML-based file called VS Settings. You can have many of these loaded onto your machine, or you can browse to a network location or a specific area on your machine, such as a CD drive, to import any other VS Settings files that you may have. As you remember, I had stored my settings in My Custom Environment Settings. Let's go ahead and choose that and select Next. On this dialog box, you can choose which settings you'd like to import. Some of these settings may not be available, hence the exclamation point. If you scroll down, you can see all the different settings that you can choose from, such as your output window from which your code is compiled, object browser options to store what kind of sort order you had set on your object browser, as well as the toolbox and any other window layouts. Select Finish. Select Close. Your settings were successfully imported, and now our environment is stored back. You'll remember that I had my toolbox a little wider, and now it restored that Windows setting. You'll notice all my custom code snippets are now returned, and also my tabs to my toolbox. This is a very useful feature for productivity, and also a way of sharing best practices for managing code snippets between members of your team.